Hi everyone. How you doing today? Let's get this down just a little bit. Hopefully the sound is wonderful, and hopefully you're all doing wonderful. Welcome to another book night. Now again, we are here in the studio and my library where I normally stream from, but also, I do a lot of my work here. It's a really comfortable spot for me. Just making sure everything is working, everything is going. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are here once more. Now, I realize normally I will switch it up so that every other week we're doing something different, something new. But I really enjoyed doing book night last week, and I'd like to continue on with it with all of you. Give us the opportunity, give us the chance. Let me get a little closer here. Give us the opportunity, give us the chance to really enjoy book night and also to really enjoy this story together. It looks like I am live everywhere. Absolutely wonderful. Now, before we get going, I just want to say a couple of things really quick. Well, first off, I'm coming to you all through Restream, an absolutely wonderful software, which allows me to be streaming right now to Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube simultaneously. I'm with all of you. And of course, our hearts go out to the people from Restream, their main office and headquarters, I believe. It's located in Ukraine, so our hearts go out to all of them. Hopefully they're all safe, all doing well, and hopefully they stay that way, and their families. But welcome to another book night. I have the microphone set up, so hopefully you are getting... Yes, I can see comments here, so welcome. So glad you're here. Now, also want to say just a quick visual descriptor. So I have long brown hair, glasses. I'm wearing a Fireberry lipstick today. We are in kind of a bluish purple light here in the library and studio. I have this large microphone right in my face, and I have one of my paintings behind me here. It's all very fun, all very wonderful. It's a great place to be. Now, I do have some water because we're going to be reading again tonight, so I'm going to have that water nearby. I'm going to try to make sure that I am not drinking as often this week as I was last week. I was taking a sip every now and again, but with all the continuous conversation, the mouth gets a bit dry. So just one more thing before we get going. Obviously it's on the screen and it was on my intro, but book night comes with a trigger warning. Some of the topics covered in my book and in my fiction are not suitable necessarily for all audiences. So depending if you have issues with certain types of sensitive material, you might want to have someone else watch or listen to this and then let you know how it's going to be for you, or just understand that there will be potentially sensitive material discussed in the fiction. Everything from possible self-harm to extinguishing one's own life, as well as violence and, of course, substance abuse. So these are just a few things that do come up in the beginning of Without the Light, but we're going to make sure to cover them. And I am going to be reading from where I left off last week, so if you have not seen last week's episode, let me just go ahead. I'm going to be dropping just a couple things in chat really quick here. So, of course, the first thing is numbers. Should you be having any thoughts that are similar to what the characters are going through or what we discussed last week, there are numbers that I have just put into the chat. Hopefully you can see them where you are. But also, if you have not seen the last episode of Book Night, when we began reading Without the Light, I've put the link to that in the chat also, so you can go ahead and watch last week's reading, where we do the introductions, the prologue, and of course the beginning of the book. And I would like to once more say something that I said last week. And if you are having any thoughts similar to our main character, Courtney, in regards to depression or self-harm, or you just need someone to talk to, please reach out. There are people out there who will talk to you, who will listen to you. So reach out, talk to them. You know, it's going to make all the difference. Fast solutions are not solutions always. And some things are temporary, and a permanent fix is not always the way. Especially when things can pass or get better, or you can learn to live with it in different ways. Now, just before we get reading for the day, I would like to say I hope everyone is doing fantastic. I hope you've had a wonderful week. I'm so glad I have you joining me over on YouTube and Twitch and Twitter. And, you know, we're just going to keep this rolling. We're going to have as much fun as we possibly can. We're going places. There's a lot of places to go in Without the Light. The Great Web is a vast place, and we are going to explore it, and hopefully you enjoy the explorations. As a quick recap, we are going to be rejoining Courtney Rubell after an otherworldly intervention stopped what should have been the end of his life. So let's get right into this. How does that sound? And if you don't remember, we last left off with Courtney and the cab driver, Zenevieve. They had gone to get dinner together after Courtney hailed the cab. Start right in the conversation. Buddy, I'm in need of returning to work. Can we go to a bar tonight? Zen asked, with a well-mannered burp. Sounds fine, Zen. You get back to work. I'm going to walk from here. I will be outside the place where it is I picked you up at 8, buddy. Zenevieve said with a smile. They gave their goodbyes and made along on their separate ways. Soon Courtney was making his way through the city with a sense of victory. He hardly noticed the distant following figure. However, the whole while that he was out, I was not very far away. After all, I needed to monitor my investment. Courtney Rubel had made his way around the city and eventually picked himself up a pack of cigarettes. His wanderings brought him to the peaceful green of Community Park, and more precisely, to a red iron bench decorated with various leaf-like designs and a flowing river motif. There was no particular reason that he chose that bench, save its nice view and a convenient location, but nonetheless he chose that particular bench. He lit up a cigarette and crossed his legs, enjoying the pleasant surroundings and nice early evening air. It took little time for him to become at ease here, and little more time for him to grow aware that something was amiss. Looking to his side, he noticed a plain silver ring sitting in the grass by the bench. It was just sitting there so ambiguously. He picked his memory to try and determine if it was there when he sat down. As he stretched his hand down to pick it up, a momentary darkness seemed to eat his vision. Again he felt the horrid acid taste in his mouth, and he could feel the water filling his nose. His veins burned, and his head grew dizzy, and as he plucked up the ring, he was shot back into the current situation. He was just sitting there, on the park bench, smoking a cigarette. Yet an ache filled his bones, and his body was filled with overbearing weakness. As he recovered his senses, he looked at the ring and out of curiosity slid it onto his thumb. It seemed a perfect fit, but then again he considered how many people must have similar thumb sizes. All the good luck he felt was popping along, as if nothing else, not really deserved, but he was enjoying it nonetheless. He had a new friend, a new ring, a wad of money, a new lease on life. So why was something in the back of his mind so at a loss? There's nothing in life that is free, and he knew that all too well. So what would the cost be for his good fortune? He knew that I wanted him to help me, but he had no idea what kind of help I desired. Though in the long run he felt that any price is worth the chance to be this alive again. So he sat there on the park bench and breathed in another smoky breath. It was nice to be alive and able to enjoy your life. As he finished off the last of his cigarette, he flicked it off behind him into the park, not realizing that his cigarette had landed on the cheek of a passing woman. "What the hell?" A sweet but very annoyed voice yelled out. Courtney turned his head to see his faux pas and a very unhappy red-headed woman. She looked at him with a lovely set of bluish-green eyes and a bit-down lip. Her hand was on her cheek to cover the slight burn, and she was walking towards the sanctity of his solitary park bench. "Sorry about that," he said a little dismissively. An apology she wasn't overly thrilled with. She rounded the edge of the bench and pushed her black pleated skirt forward so she could sit down. She was wearing a grayish-blue net sweater, and she set down at her feet a khaki messenger bag that seemed more than full. She looked at him, as if to say she was going to hit him with that messenger bag, and held out her hand. "Give me one." "One what?" he asked. "A chocolate bar. What the hell do you think? Give me a cigarette." She said in a snide kind of tone, to which he pulled out a stick and handed it to her. She held out her hand again. "Lighter, please, and thank you." She was rather abrupt. He pulled his lighter out and handed it to her, pulling another cigarette out for himself. She took the lighter and leaned forward, lighting her cigarette and then holding the burning flame out for him to do the same. With her offer accepted, the two breathed in their respective noxious fumes and released them into their collective atmosphere. "It's okay," she said. "What is okay?" he asked. "I was accepting your piss-poor apology." "Alex," she said, holding out her hand. He took her hand and smiled. "Courtney. Nice to meet you, Alex, and I'm sorry. If I had known you were there, I would have aimed better." She leaned back on the bench to enjoy the view, and he did the same. "So is this why you sit here?" she asked. "Is what why?" "This view, or do you sit here to attack passers-by?" She shot back with a smile. "I sat here because it seemed to have a nice view. Had I known that it was a good place to meet people, I would have come here sooner." "So you really think that I want to get to know you, an asshole that fires his burning cigs at innocent women who've had enough to deal with today?" He lifted his eyebrow and took a puff off his cigarette. "Not really, but I would like to get to know the girl who I now owe a better apology." She looked at him and then gave him the once-over. "From the look of you, I bet you can afford a really nice apology, so I guess you can get to know me." "So what have you already had to endure today?" he asked her. She gave a long sigh and took a pen and a piece of paper out of her bag. She looked up at him, and she wrote her phone number on it, and then handed him the paper. "I will tell you all about it when you pick me up later. Call me at 9, and then you can take me out somewhere nice." She stood up for the bench and flicked her cigarette off into the grass. "I have to spend time with my friend Zen at 8, but if you don't mind a tag-along for a while, I'm sure we can have a very nice evening." Honestly, he couldn't abandon his new friend on their first bar night, but also he wasn't about to wimp out on the potential here. "I guess it's fine. I don't want to offset your plans, but I do expect to hear from you tonight, and I do expect you to make it a nice apology," she said as she started to walk away. Courtney couldn't help but be confused by how his luck was going. His first day out to enjoy his life again, and he already made a new friend and met a rather odd but interesting woman. Things were going well. They were going so well that he didn't even see me sitting down at the bench on the other side of the park. So curious how a happy mind can go along without seeing the storm clouds on the horizon. But that is how humans are. After he had his fill of the park, he stood up to make his way back to the dismal apartment building he called home. He had to change his clothes in anticipation of the coming evening. The trip across the city was relatively quick, and in no time he was opening his apartment door. He flicked the light switch and found his home to be a welcome sight despite the mess it was. Maybe now would be a good time to consider buying furniture, he thought. "Honey, I'm home," he said as he viewed his empty apartment. "I doubt that we are intimate enough for you to refer to me as honey," I said as I stepped out of the hallway into his vision. For a moment, he looked shocked to see me. He closed the door and walked towards me. "You wouldn't have possibly cleaned up more of my home, would you?" He was indignant. I did not respond to his query, but instead moved on to what I was there for. "I took the liberty of having a bed delivered while you were out," I said. He walked past me and peered into the bedroom. Sitting where his piles of clothes once were was a neatly made king-size bed. Across from it, a new dresser where his myriad of clothing now was stored. "Thank you." "You have a big night ahead of you, don't you?" I asked without actually needing answer. "Yes, I made some friends today. I'm meeting them tonight, in a couple hours, actually." He spoke, though when he turned to me, he saw I had something more important on my mind. "You're very quickly becoming a better man. It won't be long. and soon you will have recovered from where you once were. I spoke as his eyes turned down to the floor. He started to play with the silver ring on his thumb and then looked at my hands. I could see that he made the connection, or at least had a glimmer of what was occurring. This is your ring, isn't it? Why was it in the park? I held up my hands to show him only 9 of my fingers now had rings. No, Courtney. It is your ring now. I left it for you. After all, you are in need of generosity, aren't you? I smiled. I guess. He looked to the floor again. Dear Courtney, I will make you a happy man. You will have everything you wanted, and in the end, we will all have what we want. You'll not have to suffer the consequences of your poor decisions. You will reap the rewards that so few are thankful for. I walked up to him. I ran my fingers through his hair and placed my other hand on the side of his face. I saw the tears returning to his eyes again. He was mine so completely, and he barely even knew it. His hand found its way onto my own, and he leaned his forehead against mine. The pain of the previous night was still right there in his heart, and I was milking every last drop of it. Will you keep me safe? He asked between tears. I felt the briefest sensation of empathy. As it faded, I knew that this would take more work. Emotions are so hard to control, but they also are so hard to learn. Courtney's emotions were invading my heart, and it was only going to get worse, but I was prepared for this. Shh, dear Courtney, I am your angel of mercy. In this time of need, I will keep you safe. He leaned against me, and I put my arms around him. In my embrace, he broke down into a sad and miserable state of tears. I maintained my placating attitude and stroked his head like he was a lost child. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here. Just take a moment. This story is so much fun, and I know interrupting it too often can take away a little bit, but there are at least some things to say, and I do want to go ahead and I'm going to put a couple things in chat again really quick. Now, I'm going to also acknowledge something that's very obvious, depending on the way you are hearing this, but this is some really classic manipulation, and it's all coming from the perspective of the manipulator. There's a lot that's going to be going on. I have gone ahead, though, and I have once more put some information in chat. I realize we're talking about sensitive topics and subjects, so I do want everyone to be aware that if you need anyone to talk to for any reason whatsoever, there are people out there who will listen. Welcome, welcome, welcome over on Twitch. I'm so glad that you're here. As this is our second book night where we will be reading through Without the Light Volume 1, should you wish to go back and catch up if you have not seen the first read-through. I am going to be providing a link to that. I provided one earlier on, but I am going to drop one again right here. So, if you did not catch the first part of this read-through of Without the Light Volume 1, you can click on that link, which is in chat, and that will link you to the YouTube video, where you can catch up to where we are today. And then feel free to rejoin us, or watch this one later. I'm going to be continuing this book night series for some time. There will be breaks, so don't worry. We will get back to our other fun kind of nights, art night and film night and things like that, and game night. But it's just so much fun to be able to sit here and read and just enjoy this great time together. Can see that right in chat. Too much wine can make for an interesting night. All right, thank you everyone for being here. We're gonna keep on going. I'm gonna pick up from right where we left off. I'm just gonna read that last section again. Dear Courtney, I am your angel of mercy in this time of need. I will keep you safe. He leaned against me again, and I put my arms around him. In my embrace, he broke down into a sad and miserable state of tears. I maintained my placating attitude and stroked his head like he was a lost child. Now go and change for your friends. They will want to see you smiling, free of tears. Show them how beautiful you are. And then they will come to love you as much as you deserve to be loved. I spoke with as much kindness as I could without sounding as if I was lying. He nodded his head and stood up straight again. Wiping the tears from his eyes, he went to his closet for a new outfit. After finding a more casual set of clothes, he went to the bathroom for another shower. The only thing he didn't take off as he climbed into the hot water was the silver thumb ring. When he had finished with his shower, he found that I was nowhere to be seen. The only lingering presence I had left was a fresh pot of coffee and a silver cigarette case on the counter. Though he had not seen the case until now, he knew right away that it was where I had procured the cigarettes I had given him. He reached for the case with desire burning in his eyes. He felt the burning feeling beginning to pound in his veins, and the muddy, weary ache of the needle began to pulse through his arm. His vision grew blurry for a moment, then his legs buckled slightly. As his vision cleared, he grabbed up the case. He opened it right away and lit one of the loving treats inside. Every puff he took, he seemed to relish more than any smoke he had had before it. After a few cups of coffee, he finished getting dressed and then equipped himself with my gifts. In his pants pocket, he placed the money clip. In his jacket breast pocket, he slid the cigarette case for safekeeping. With a slight fingering at the silver ring, he went to put his shoes on. Soon it'd be time for him to meet Zenevieve, and then it wouldn't be long before he had to call Alex. His world seemed so bright, and yet something was still out of place. My hope is that he wouldn't realize what it was until the time had come for all the pieces to click into place. He went back to the bathroom to double-check his appearance. He pushed his hair back from his face again and checked to make sure his teeth looked clean. As he was checking himself, he noticed that his nails could use a clipping. So he opened the medicine cabinet and pulled out the nail clippers. A few quick snips and his nails were neat and trim again. He pushed his hair back once more, then made his way out of the apartment building. It was just down the hall, into the stairwell, and then out to the large glass door out to the street. The night seemed so alive, and for the first time in his life he looked at the sky with honest love for the beauty of its wonder. Nothing was without some new allure, and he was glad that his life could finally be so lovely. All the while he was still unaware that I am not far away, watching him. As 8 o'clock rolled around, the yellow and white van pulled up, with Genevieve smiling out at his awaiting passenger. Courtney climbed into the passenger side door, and they took off down the road. "Drinks and pool, buddy?" Genevieve asked. "Sounds like a nice plan. Hope you don't mind picking someone up at 9, Courtney replied. Zen nodded along, and he turned on the van radio. "That is good. More friends is more good time," said Genevieve as he played around with the volume. The radio pulsed out the static sound of early 70s rock as they drove along into the more lively blocks of the city. The early evening streets were alive with a nice cross-section of the various populace of the urban community. Each face was somehow familiar and yet so foreign to Courtney. From the streetwalkers to the curbside musicians, everyone was a sight to behold for his eyes. Though he didn't know who they were, he felt as if he was one of them again. The van pulled up to the curb in front of a crowded-looking bar, and the two men headed inside. There wasn't much debate as to where they would sit. It was just an idle decision on two empty stools. The woman behind the bar looked about as happy to be there as a slab of meat in a butcher shop. But nonetheless, she was polite and quick to get their order. Again, it was a double scotch and a beer, but this time Genevieve covered his own tab. "So, Zen, are you married?" Courtney asked. "If I was married, would I be in a bar now?" Genevieve asked back with a laugh. He looked around for a moment and then took a draught of his beer. "My wife passed. She was a good woman, but it was her time," Genevieve said, losing some of his blissful tone. Courtney looked down at his scotch, feeling a little embarrassed. With another slug of his beer, Zen smiled again and turned towards Courtney. "Is it that you were ever married?" "No. Never could keep a girl long enough to make the leap. At this point, I doubt I'll ever get married," Courtney replied as Zen bobbed his head along. "Maybe you meet a nice girl one day. Then you will." Courtney couldn't help but think about Alex. Their encounter in the park seemed like fate, though it was hard to say if it was going to be anything more than a new friend. "Well, we're picking up a girl at 9. Maybe my luck might change," Courtney said to no one in particular. Zen held up his glass for a quick cheers. "If I knew it was a lady friend, I would have brought along one of my own." Courtney tipped his glass to Genevieve's, and they knocked back the last of their first round. "Maybe we can find you a nice girl here. What do you say?" Courtney laughed. No. These girls don't want me," Zen said, waving his hands as if to shoo the women away. "I need a classy lady, like a princess." Zen was semi-joking. The girl behind the bar gave him a nasty look, and she asked if they needed new drinks. Another round of drinks came along, and they continued with their small talk, all the while Courtney watching the time. He didn't want to be late to call Alex. I kept my distance from him for this. Watching from the back of the bar, his little escapade needed to go off without much interference. As time ticked away, I watched as Courtney used the grubby little payphone to call Alex, and soon was leading Genevieve off to the van. They had places to go and things to do. Time is a strange thing, and humans use it so strangely. But who am I to complain? After all, these fleeting hours were so little to me. I'd waited for too long to find someone like Courtney. And it was through him alone that I would have what I wanted. The yellow and white van buzzed along the route Alex had given them and finally came to a stop in front of a humble little blue house. It had been cut up into several apartments and had all the charm of a tenement. Sitting on the front steps was the red-headed girl named Alex, her hair pulled up into a makeshift bun and her face painted ever so slightly to accent her natural grace. She was by no means timeless, but she did possess a great deal of earthliness. She was dressed in another knit turtleneck and a mildly becoming gray skirt. Courtney stepped out of the van and walked up to greet her. "So, a taxi? Not quite the white knight getaway I hoped for," she jabbed. Courtney grinned and bowed in a theatrical manner. "Milady, your chariot awaits. Forgive the peasantly way with it you will be traveling," Courtney mocked. Alex stood up from the steps and with poise flipped him off. "I didn't know you were fluent in asshole." She held out her elbow. He wrapped his arm around hers and walked her to the van door. In a moment, they were all inside the van. "This is Zen. Zen, this is Alex." "Nice to meet you, Zen. So you two are pretty good friends?" Genevieve laughed lightly, and Courtney tried not to do the same. "We are buddies." "Where are we taking Princess in business class?" Zen asked with a laugh. Alex looked a little confused and looked over to Courtney. "I think some dinner's in order. And if the girl doesn't mind, we can go out for more drinks and pool. Bourbon Company again. It's a good place." Courtney looked at Alex and she nodded. "Sounds lovely, Zen." He laughed and pointed the van in the general direction of the fine eatery. A few minutes later, and they were in the parking lot. As the two men got out, Alex cleared her throat to let Courtney know he needed to open her door, an action he didn't mind going through with. As they entered, I watched on from a distant table in the dining area. The host recognized the pair from earlier in the day and put his nasty little face back on. His faked pleasantries were, of course, ignored by the trio. It was the price of a nice restaurant. They were seated in a booth this time, and Courtney put in a preemptive drink order. House beer for Zen, double scotch for him, and he paused to ask Alex what she wanted. With a breath of hesitation, she decided on a screwdriver. Courtney seemed pleased with her decision, and they waited for their drinks and the waiter. They chatted along as drink menus, and then food came along. It was very little time they had begun making friendly conversation, and Genevieve opened a bad topic. We should go where there's a piano for Courtney to play. He was good once," said Genevieve, oblivious to the fact he couldn't actually say the word piano. Courtney held his breath and shot down his scotch. "Oh my God, we should. He didn't tell me he played." Alex was laughing. She leaned onto Courtney and made puppy dog look with her face. "No, you don't want to hear me play. I haven't played in so long it would sound terrible," Courtney protested. Of course, with both Zen and Alex now pleading, he started to feel pressure. Come now, buddy, you play." Zen prodded him. Alex started in, making a fake little whimper and sound, and pushed her puppy dog face to its limits. "Please, Court, play for us," Alex whined. "Okay, but I can't promise it'll sound very good. I haven't played in years, and I might be a little bit drunk. I must be buzzed at least to agree to this." Courtney said as he checked over his shoulder to make sure there wasn't a piano anywhere in sight. To his relief, the Bourbon Company barroom was barren of any random musical instruments. I know where we find a good piano for Courtney. We can go to the Poly. They have piano and good beer. Zen offered up a solution. But nerves were already prickling in Courtney's hands. He felt afraid to play in many ways, and the scotch was running through him kind of fast. Well, we can go there after I visit the little boy's room. And I still haven't finished dinner, Courtney said as he excused himself from the table. Alex leaned her head out of the booth and yelled after him, I'm getting doggy bags. You can eat later. She laughed. Poor Zenevieve began to shovel in more food. Frankly, he wanted to eat now, though he had already consumed the contents of 2 bread baskets and most of his dinner. As Courtney flushed the toilet, he found himself staring into the restroom mirrors. Something was filling his mind. The thought of playing was more frightening than he wanted to think about. He turned on the faucet and began to splash his face with water. He wanted to think of a way out of this. He felt a pounding in his head and aching in his hands. He drank too much? No. It was fear. The fear of trying to turn back time. As he turned off the faucet, he looked back into his reflection. He thought he saw someone standing behind him. He spun around to check, but the room was empty save him. As he turned back to the mirror, a shiver went down his spine. He saw that indeed he wasn't alone. At least not alone completely. Sitting next to the sink was a shining, plain, silver ring, glistening with a twinge of light from the fluorescent tubes in the ceiling. He knew it wasn't there before, and he knew that he saw someone in the mirror behind him. He just wasn't sure where they went to. He knew, though, that the ring was for him, and he reached for it. For a moment, the reflection in the mirror was a shirtless specter, bleeding just as he was before he tried to end everything. He could see the yellow cord on his arm, the needle next to the sink. He felt the rush of pain as he fell to the floor. His body throbbed, his veins burned, until he thought he could see them as deep black lines visible through his flesh. He lay on the floor for a while with the taste of acid in his throat and the edges of his vision fading into blackness. The ache burned his mind like something alien was inside his head. As the feeling rushed through him, he thought he might break in two. Death seemed to be at the door, but somehow it receded. When the strength returned to his body so that he could stand, he looked at his hands to see if the black veins were still visible. They weren't. As he opened his hand, he saw the silver ring sitting in his palm, like a stale promise. There was little thought involved in his next action as he slid the new ring onto his opposite thumb. He felt the fear begin to fade away. He pulled himself towards the mirror and made sure he still looked presentable. Pushing back his hair, he stared into the reflection of his brownish-green eyes and wiped the last of the water from his face. He had to rejoin his friends at the table. He knew he could play now. He had an angel of mercy watching him. So naive. But then again, how could he know what was coming? For that matter, how could he know what his angel wanted? Alex and Zenevieve watched as their companion walked from the restroom. There was something different in his eyes, and the way he walked seemed purposeful. As he got to the table, he saw the to-go containers and smiled, throwing some cash down on the table. He held out his elbow for Alex and even extended a friendly hand to Zenevieve. "Dear lady, good sir, shall we depart for the Poly?" Courtney asked in his most polite tone. Alex stood and took his elbow in her own, and even Zen smiled and grabbed his hand. There was a sense of deep and old friendship. even though they had known each other for only such a short time that it seemed as if they'd been a trio all along. "So you got the jitters?" asked Zen perceptively. Courtney just smiled at him and put his arm around Zen's shoulder. "I think you could say that, buddy." "Makes me wonder what happened in that bathroom," Alex questioned jokingly. Courtney just lifted his eyebrow in a comical way and gave a half-cocked smile. "Well..." They all laughed. Alex gave him a mock punch to the jaw, and they made their way out to the van. The ride to the Poly increased the playful attitude as they joined in a karaoke-style choir, singing along with the sounds of the radio. As the song changed, they were treated to an impromptu solo from Zenevi, fumbling his way through lyrics. Not a care in the world was had. They made such a lovely set that there was little to no judgment on quality or lack thereof. The good times had not ceased as they pulled into the busy parking lot of their destination. The Poly had been built out of an old motel and restaurant. Thus, it had plenty of room for merrymaking and foolish pastimes. The ancient motel sign still stood at the edge of the road and had been enhanced with several hundred lines of Christmas lights and a gaggle of hanging Chinese lanterns. Groups of cars and motorbikes of all kinds cluttered the U-shaped motel-style parking lot, and as many people were drinking inside as there were outside. "Zen, where did you take us?" Alex was slightly mortified. "It's Poly. It's a good place," Zen answered innocently. Courtney put his arms around their shoulders and gave a wicked little smile. "I think this is exactly where we need to be. I wonder if Mrs. Bates is home." Alex punched him lightly in the ribs and smiled. Obviously, his joke made the setting more bearable. They made their way inside the lobby-style doors and moved past an army of pool tables towards the bar and a makeshift dance floor and stage. A chalkboard behind the bar announced "Open Mic Monday to Friday." There was a weird Tiki Island theme to the bar itself and a strange dead pirate kind of collage going on in the stage area. This just wasn't any kind of bar. This was a special place. As Courtney looked around, he felt at home here more than he had in any place other than the Cromwell. They ordered drinks and began to settle into the new dig. "This place is surreal." Alex looked around. "It is real, and drinks are cheap," said Zen, not really understanding what she meant. Though as they spoke, Courtney had already begun to walk towards the stage. A man in torn pants and a leather vest appeared to be the moderator for the open mic, and Court intended to be up there as soon as possible. I watched as I shot a game of pool with a drunkard. The wretch actually thought he could beat me, but was sorely disappointed when he had to hand over the remaining money he had brought with him. Some people don't know what the difference between a safe bet and a fool's wager is, but I enjoy showing them the finer points. Alex sipped away at a girly-looking margarita glass and watched Courtney barter his position on the list for stage. A man was sitting on a stool in front of the microphone playing an acoustic guitar. It was hard to tell what he was singing, but it didn't matter right now. Courtney walked back to his friends at the bar and smiled. "I'm up next. Took a silver tongue to get him to move me in front of some people." Courtney smirked. Alex handed him his scotch and took a drink from her glass. Zenevieve was busy trying to talk to the girl next to him. All the beer must have given him some confidence. "What are you going to play?" Alex asked sweetly. Courtney smiled and made a zipper sound as he pulled his fingers across his lips. "You'll have to wait and hear." There was light clapping as the guitarist finished his song, and the MC thanked him for his wonderful performance. "That was great, wasn't it, everyone? Now, though, a special treat. Tonight we have Courtney Rubell, as some of you might remember from nearly nightly performances at the old Cromwell Hotel. Be honest, I thought the guy died. But he resurrected himself just for us, the MC said, as a large amount of the crowd started to give some early applause and shouting. A feeling of renewed spirit filled Courtney as he walked up to the stage again. His feet felt only slightly heavy as he walked up the stairs to take a seat at the piano. The MC ran up and moved the microphone over to him and adjusted the height down to his level. Alex looked at the people clapping and then looked at Genevieve. Is he really that popular? Zen looked around and then looked up at Court on stage. He must be. Just shrugging his shoulders. Courtney began staring down at the white and black keys in front of him and felt a prick of panic. He turned his head up to the crowd and saw Alex's face. He smiled and leaned into the microphone. I know that most of you don't know who I am, but don't worry. I won't disappoint, Courtney said as he began to dance his fingers across the keys of the piano. There was an almost instant magic that came out of him. The sound from the keys was as if he had never been away from them, and he moved his face back to the microphone. The words came so easily, and the music was smooth, as it was when he played years before. The room was filled with music, and everything began to fall away from his sight. There was nothing except for the piano, the microphone, and him. It was just black and white keys, filling the empty space he had in his heart. There was no fear anymore of anything. It began to worry me, but not much. As long as he felt he needed me, when it was over, all would go smoothly. I needed to speed things up, though. His happiness wasn't boiling out through me, though I can't interfere yet, not until I need to. The music played on, and Zen and Alex were surprised by how well he really did play. There was little doubt in their minds that he was meant to be right there with the keys. As his serenade came to a close, the crowd exploded in whistles and shouts. The sound of their clapping was nice accompaniment for his modest thank you through the microphone. With that, he stood and walked down to the bar again. The MC returned to the stage and thanked him for his performance and introduced the next hopeful musician. Alex and Zen gave him a warm welcome back to the bar, and they continued on with their drinks. The evening had become a beautiful series of events, and soon they were making their way home. It was with no certain reason as to why, but at the end of the night Courtney was alone again, walking up his apartment stairs. When he finally was in his apartment again, he walked to the bedroom and fell onto his bed. Sleep beckoned him, and he wasn't going to fight it. Why should he? The day had become one of the best he had had in a long time. Nothing but happy thoughts and a weird set of coincidences. Of course, nothing is just coincidence in life, because things happen for a reason. He just wasn't aware of the reasons for any of it. He drifted into sleep with no dreams he was aware of, just darkness. The time seemed so short before he was jarred awake. It wasn't morning yet, and he was aware of that much. He rigidly rolled out of his bed and made his way along the walls out to the living room. Sprawling out on the floor, he looked out the sliding glass door into the night sky. It couldn't be more than 4 a.m, he thought. He pulled the silver cigarette case out of his pocket and lit up a smoke. Pulling in deep on its hot, bitter taste, he let out a long puff of smoke and foul air. What woke him? He looked around the dark apartment for an answer, but could find none. No mysterious visitor, no loud sounds from his neighbors, nothing strange at all, or as far as he could tell. The silent, empty apartment offered up no answers. Maybe he just needed to take a piss, go back to bed. He had drank a good deal, and he didn't remember going to the bathroom after they left the bourbon company. He stood up and followed the wall of the bathroom. A flick of the switch, and his eyes squinted down from the light. He unzipped his pants, proceeded to empty himself of the night's drinks, as he kept puffing away on his cigarette. As he finished up and flushed the toilet, he made his way to the mirror for a quick once-over. He looked into his reflection as if it was some puzzle to be solved, and took another breath of smoke from his cigarette. As he breathed out, something in the mirror caught his eye, and the cigarette fell from his fingers into the sink. He leaned in to look more clearly at himself. Maybe he was just imagining things. His skin seemed so pale the other day, but he didn't think it was this stark in complexion. He was so pale that his skin almost looked gray. Or was it a trick of the light? He ran his hands over his eyes and rubbed the weary sockets for a minute. Looking into the mirror again, he almost fell backwards as he saw clearly that his eyes were almost brown. His eyes were never that dark, not even when he was a child. What was happening to him? He looked at his hands to see if they looked as gray as his face. His skin never seemed so sick in color before, and even his nails looked long and grim in their hue. He opened the medicine cabinet to get the nail clippers, and then lurched back away from the mirror and sink. He remembered that he had clipped his nails twice now, in only a little more than a day. What was happening? He clipped the ends off his fingernails and walked out of the bathroom and onto his balcony. Sliding the glass door open, he stepped out, leaned over the railing, and pulled out another cigarette, and lit it so he could try to relax his nerves. Something was clearly wrong. What had happened to him? He looked at his hands again, and the shine from the silver rings danced through his eyes. He wondered if they had something to do with all of this. What is wrong, my dear Courtney? He heard my voice from the other end of the balcony. Turning his head, he started to back away from me. What is happening to me? He was trembling. I took a step forward and smiled softly. With each step I took, he took another backwards. I've given you the gift of life. I've told you this. He pushed himself against the railing and held up his hand. Don't give me that bullshit. What's happening to me? He started getting angry. I smiled and stepped forward again. No bullshit, Courtney. Just the truth. I told you I would keep you safe, and I have. Safe from want, safe from loneliness, safe from fear. What is happening to me? He began to yell now. I smiled and stepped forward again. A price must be paid for all the things you enjoy. Did you think my deal was without consequence? When you had nothing, I gave you money. When your lungs ached for death, I gave you a cigarette. When your home needed comforts, I provided them. When you were lonely, I moved friendly people into your life. When you were afraid to fail, I gave you confidence. When you yearned for an end to your life, I stepped in to give you a new one. It is simple. As you want, I provide, and I have taken my toll from you each time. So be happy, Courtney. Your life will have everything you desire in it. He stepped up on the balcony railing and held his hand up towards me, as if to stop me from moving closer. His eyes burned with a kind of fear that I could feel swimming through my heart, and it was just as I needed, and it was clear. He's still mine, even if he would deny it. What do you want from me? I want to give you everything you want. In return, you'll give me what I want. Come down from there, Courtney, before you get hurt. I was speaking innocently, an innocence I had mastered over many, many centuries of practice. These humans respond to it so quickly, and I hardly need to try. I stepped forward and he put his other foot up on the railing. He was teetering, and the slightest wind could knock him to the ground. "Don't come any closer, friend, or whatever you are. I am not for sale. I'm not some thing you can use. I appreciate everything you gave me. I just want to have a normal life. I want to be able to move on with my life. Forget all of this." He was close to tears. I stepped forward again, knowing it would set him off balance. He began to shudder on the edge, and I felt my moment was nearing. "Courtney, you can never forget this. It's all you have now. You belonged to me from the moment you took my gifts. I thought that would be obvious by now. The money, the cigarettes, the rings, your life. All the things I gave to you, you took without hesitation. So now you must pay the price. You will live a great deal in the grand scheme of things. So please, come off that ledge. Don't waste the precious gift of life." I stepped forward again as I spoke to him. With all the planning, I knew that the risk of him noticing the changes was a good possibility. I also knew that a man like him would find the changes monstrous and frightening. So I took the risks, knowing that my gains would be far greater. After all, the game was so much fun, and the moves were so precise. I took another step forward and held out my hand to him. "Stop it. Stay back. I don't belong to you, and I can give your gifts back to you. I don't need them." His words, poison. Too bad he didn't know he was only poisoning himself. He reached into his pocket and threw the cigarette case and money at me. "Take it all back," he screamed at me. He pulled off one of the thumb rings and threw it towards me, and then he reached for the other. As he started to pull it off his finger, he began to slip from the railing. "I tried to warn you, Courtney. I told you not to waste the gift." I was detached from his plight. His feet couldn't keep their place on the railing any longer, and he slipped off completely. His body tried to grab onto something, anything, but it was too late. He was falling towards the sidewalk at a nice, brisk pace. As his body slammed into the cement walkway, the sound of crunching flesh filled the night. The streets were nearly empty, save for a few lonely souls, and they saw his brief journey through the air. Blood seeped from imperceivable wounds, and as he looked out at the world with dying eyes, he saw me crouching over him. "Courtney. Tisk, tisk. I would have given you everything you wanted. This end wouldn't have happened. But since you spit in the face of one who would have helped you, I have no choice. You still have my ring. This is the last chance to live," I said to him as he faded deeper and deeper. "If you want to live, just say the word, and I will make it so. You will never have to see me again. Unless you want to. This I promise to you." I whispered into his ear. His life was fading out, but he was still desperate to live. Maybe that is why he strained to speak. "Please, I want to live." And his voice cracked and wheezed out of his broken body. "Then you will live forever and ever." I reached my hands down and I put a ring on every one of his fingers. Soon I had given him every last one. I picked him up like a child. The people on the street, however, saw none of it. I didn't want them to. After all, when the paramedics arrived, they had too much to do other than be concerned about who they saved from death. The world went black for Courtney and myself. The next thing either one of us would see was the inside of intensive care at the hospital. Next to the bed were the only people who cared for Courtney, Alex and Genevieve. He could see them but couldn't speak. He didn't know how to. Alex leaned over and kissed the broken man's cheek and whispered into his ear, "We're here for you, Court." The word sounded so sweet, like nothing I had heard before. I couldn't tell what she was thinking or feeling. It was so new and beautiful. She stared into the eyes of the injured body and smiled, pushing her hand through filthy hair, and leaned forward to kiss his head. "Court, I don't know what happened to you last night, but I am so happy to see your black eyes weren't closed forever." I looked over at Genevieve and then looked into the corner of the room, where only the most keen eye could have seen what I did. A man with slicked back, blonde hair, and gray skin. He was wearing the most lovely scarlet three-piece suit and black tie. Each one of his fingers had a modest silver ring on it, and he looked at me with vacant eyes. He didn't know the price of living again, but he didn't need to, at least not until now. After all, so few people get a second chance, and Courtney Rubel knows that better than most. Just as now he knows the price of all things. He can't feel anger towards me because he doesn't know what it feels like yet. And he isn't upset at my trick. After all, Courtney will live forever, and I will be dead in what would be a blink of his eye. From this moment on, I will go on living the life of Courtney Rubel, and he will go on as the man in the red suit. Oh my goodness. That is a marvelous place actually to stop, at least for the moment. I know that we are not even close to done for the night, but I need to take 2 seconds. I need to have a drink. Oh, I hope everyone is enjoying this. Alright. If you will give me 1 second, I am going to be sharing a link where if you would like to pick up a copy of Without the Light Volume 1, Penance and Toil, you can pick that up on Amazon. It is available in ebook, paperback, and now hardcover. The current version is a re-release. It is the same marvelous work that it was before. It has just been re-released with the addition of now being available in hardcover. Do consider getting yourself a copy. And if you already have a copy, please leave a review. Or if you have one of those physical copies, if you take a picture of yourself, post it up online, I would appreciate it so very much. I definitely cannot go for the day without, of course, acknowledging the absolute fun of the way this story begins. I hope you enjoyed hearing it, and I will, of course, let you know that we are not going to leave Courtney Rubel. We are going to stay with him as the story continues. I just want to let you know that now, in case you were concerned or worried. However, Courtney Rubel has now switched places with an entity which, up until this point in time, we've only known as the man in the red suit. And he will live forever and ever. It's a devilish little trick to pull. Of course, our narrator this entire time has been the man in the red suit. And he did reveal at the end that he was manipulating all actions around Courtney's life. Now, I will say that should you go back and listen to the first read-through, you'll probably pick up a lot of this, but we have a lot more to do, a lot more adventure to cover. I will read a little bit more before we leave today. I know that there are some aspects of the way things are described and the language that are dated. And when I say dated, I mean it's not how we would say anything now. And there are aspects of perception from our characters within the story which also are representative of modes of thinking, which could be considered sexist and a little bit inappropriate now. But that, of course, was something that I've intentionally left in the book. These are people who would be living before the age of cell phones, as, of course, Courtney goes to use a payphone to call Alex, but they are representative of values which would not be acceptable anymore. Thank you so much for all the comments. Thank you for everyone who's here. We only have 15 minutes left of the show, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to read for those 15 minutes. So let me make sure that I am nice and hydrated for this. I want to at least get through a little bit more because I intend to have book nights. The scheduling will not be every week. I know that, of course, we've just done 2 in a row. It will be changed up a little bit, so we will get back to things like art and other stuff. But we're going to read a little bit more, and I'm going to do these videos until we have read through all of Volume 1. And I hope that sounds fun for everyone. One more sip, and then away we go. Actually, I will put this out right now. If anyone would like to just shoot out in the chat at any point in time something that they really liked in that beginning, in the first 2 read-throughs that we've done, feel free at any time. Just put it out in the chat. I will respond to you when I can. It's funny to think that at this point in time, without the light, the Great Web, the river, and these characters are the closest I can actually I can come to say this has been most of my life's work in fiction. Part 2. There is no end, only change. What matters most in life is hard to define. Each and every person gives it their own shape and set of dimensions. Had I known what was important in life, perhaps I wouldn't have ended up where I am. An immortal watcher of the lives of others. I can see anything I want, and no one ever can see me. Unless I want them to. I strained my memory to understand what it was to be human. It seems like I was concerned with such trivial matters then. I watch people smoke and drink, and yet can't recall the taste of either. Food seems so foreign to me, though I know I once ate as people so often do. I see them walk through life so unaware of how unimportant their daily grind really is. Curiosity spikes in me sometimes when I view them in acts of prayer and spiritual exercise. I wonder if they know something that I cannot. All my journeys and knowledge, and yet I've seen no evidence of any greater existence. I neither hear the voice of God nor view the wickedness of the devil. I wonder if somehow I am cut off from whatever divine presence might exist. Only one man can answer my questions, but his memory of being me has begun to fade. So I will let him be. After all, I cannot interrogate someone who has already forgotten so much. He has even started to forget how to see me on his own. I visit his apartment sometimes and watch him and his new girlfriend. They seem content. Sometimes he looks towards where I am, but his eyes don't focus on me the way they used to. He knows that I am there. He just has lost his vision. The cab driver visits them often, and they have become a family of sorts, though it doesn't hold the same intrigue for me as it used to. I remember vaguely what I felt like then, so vaguely. It occurs to me, though, that I cannot be the only one of my kind. There must be others out there, and I will find them. I've already learned how to see the dead as they first leave their bodies, though in short moments after they have left their mortal vessel behind, they disappear from my view. I know that there is such a thing as a soul, but I question how long it can exist without some vessel to hold it. Maybe I am just short-sighted, and lack the experience necessary to see those things, yet it remains to be seen. As of yet, I don't know how to use all the powers I know I must possess, but it will come in time. I often lack just the ability to speak to humans the way my predecessor could. There must be some key to this being that I am not yet aware of how to turn. There's no need of sleep anymore, but sometimes I close my eyes and days vanish into the ether. Sometimes even more time passes. I am aware that I can be anywhere I wish, and require very little movement to get there, though sometimes touching the world around me is so hard. My fingers do not gently brush this world, but instead can send objects rushing away from me as if they have been thrown. It's like I am some horror that even the inanimate fear coming close to. I will learn how to touch and talk again. These are easy things, just as I learned how to let people see me, and how to travel without moving. It is like the human world is a dream that clings to me. I'm here, but not really. I'm no more real to this world than the dead souls that I have seen fade into nothingness. Yet recollection of ghost stories fills me with an annoying curiosity. If there is any truth to these tales, then I'm probably the only one who can verify them. No other sees the world as I do, which makes me uniquely qualified. So with a yearning to know, I have begun to scour the world for other beings that are beyond the human scope of life, creatures or spirits that might be more like me, and thus I would find their company to be familiar and comforting. I do not know what comfort is anymore, nor do I really know if I am lacking it. It is hard to tell what I feel, but I know that I want knowledge of what I am, and knowledge of what else out there is like me. I found myself picking through all the places I knew of with stories or rumors of supernatural things. I ventured into the pines of New Jersey to seek out the devil, but was disappointed. I found nothing. Just legends and folklore. In the company of rural foolishness, I attempted to find glimpses of a goat-sucker, but Chupacabra left me empty-handed. So many empty legends, but I was determined to keep looking. There were no thunderbirds in the Americas, and no sea serpents in the lochs. No sign of Bigfoot or Yeti. I wasn't even sure what I should have been looking for. The sparse wilderness of Japan yielded no Kenku or Kitsune. though the lure of birdmen and shapeshifters seemed promising. As far as I could tell, the many necropolis structures of Egypt had no dormant spirits waiting to stand again when the time came. No, there were only bodies, well preserved and very dead. In the deep barrens of the Middle East I searched high and low for Akakaru and the 7 demons of ancient days, but again found nothing. In the old towns of Romania, Greece, and Italy, I was given no signs of Strigani or vampires, but what did I expect? No werewolves in France or Spain, and not a trace of one in Germany. London didn't have any remaining proof to give regarding Spring-Heeled Jack or the Ripper. No doubt they were just men. The many temples and high mountains in India and Tibet were not as fulfilling as I had hoped, and I began to lose interest in my search. Though I wasn't about to give up in the middle of my endeavors, so I made my way into more hidden corners of the world. The ocean's floor was full of sea life that man still had not found, but was devoid of any other revelations. Though I knew that I was not alone in the world, my search had given me something unexpected. Knowledge. I'd seen so much of the world and heard so many stories of the supernatural than I had ever known before. With so much history of strange and unexplained events and creatures, there had to be some real thing that had inspired it. My wandering brought me through the woods of Ireland and England, and then across the great unknown of Australia and its many landscapes, though it finally occurred to me that as I searched the place humans knew of, I had neglected those that they were still dumb to. I can be anywhere I wish, and I have walked in places where no man can survive, so if there was any other out there like me, they too would be able to live in any place they so choose. With no need of sleep or food, we didn't need to live where there were places to build or rivers to nourish our budding civilization. For that matter, I wore clothes that were of a very human nature and had no direct connection to what I was, save that they were what the previous creature wore. I had no reason to keep them, unless it somehow marked my station amongst my own. I wasn't sure, because I had yet to find others like me. I had to continue looking, but I needed guidance. So again, I returned to the apartment of Courtney Rubel. He had aged so much since I left him, and yet it seemed like I was only gone a moment. I wonder how many years had gone by without my notice. He was sitting on his balcony, smoking a cigarette, and I was curious as to why he continued. He stood up and closed the glass door to the balcony and went back to his seat. "Why are you here?" he asked without seeing where I was. It was strange to be on the other side of this conversation. "I need your help. Again." It took so much effort for my voice to come out. He saw me appear next to him and was shocked, I think. He must have forgotten what I looked like. "With what? 'Cause there's no fucking way I'm going back." He was very blunt, but I think I understood why. "I don't want that. You have so little life left, it would be a waste." "No, Courtney, I don't want that." For a moment, saying his name felt strange. It was like deja vu, yet I barely felt like him anymore. "What is it?" "I don't know how much I can help you now. I have no power left." He seemed almost sad. I want to know where to find others like me," I said to him. He started to laugh, and I was curious as to why. "Still don't get it, do you? There aren't any more like you. At least not here. Why do you think I traded with you? I couldn't take it anymore. An eternity alone is no way to live. No, friend. You won't find anyone like you. At least not here." He laughed in my face. It seemed strange that he could to have so much emotion now, and I could have so little. However, I knew he wasn't being honest. I could feel he was hiding some set of thoughts from me. He still had power. I could feel it. He could hide his mind from me, but only slightly. Where do I find them then? What are you not telling me? I asked him as I tried to pry into his mind, yet somehow he kept me from the answers I wanted. How? Your job is simple. Learn. You won't be ready to meet the others until you can use all your powers. You can't even get into my head. I can feel you there. You don't have what you want that way. I can keep you out of my thoughts even while I sleep. He laughed again. His defiance prickled. A strange feeling in me. As a burning surge bit at my face, I wanted to tear his mind apart. Was this anger? I hadn't felt it in so long. Oh, all right, everyone. I'm stopping us right there because we are just about at the end. Thank you so much, everyone who is joining me, whether you joined me over on YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. Thank you so much for being here. This has been another book night. Oh, that was so much fun. All right. I am dropping once more the link in chat if you'd like to pick up a copy of Without the Light, Volume 1, Penance and Toil. You can get it in ebook, paperback, or hardcover. It's available through Amazon, and also I believe it's available still through Barnes & Noble. I'll have to double check that. If it's not, I will get that fixed. However, you have all been so wonderful. If you would like to go check out the first read-through of Without the Light, that is also on my YouTube channel for your Saturday night. You can have a pop over there and you can catch up on these first two parts. We are going to end up reading through the entire book. It's going to be so much fun. And should you pick up a copy, you can follow along, you can read ahead, but no matter what you do, please leave a review and share it on your social media. It would mean the world to me, and reviews and shares help authors so very much. It increases our visibility, and it also increases awareness of indie authors. So, thank you so much. Now, I am out of here. Take care, be excellent, and beware of people in red suits who offer you gifts. Just a thought. Or people with silver rings. Oh. I did make a point to wear a silver thumb ring today because I knew I was going to read that part, so I had to do it. All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you for being here, and I will see you all again real soon.